time for our Law and You segment, sponsored by Gig and Jan Cola. You guys were one of the big fundraiser donators for our fundraiser, so thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Contribution.
Glad we could help.
Yeah, got a tag team. You know, we're in this together. We made hometown favorites too. So
that's right. Yeah, can't wait for the results.
Hopefully we pull through. Yes. Oh, the other thing too. Tonight you've got a big a little workshop coming up.
Yeah, we have a talk at the Tyrone Public Library to just answer some questions about, you know, estate questions, things like that, estate planning.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And people, they're able to write in legal questions here on the show. Sometimes they have a lot to unpack, and sometimes you're like, hey, maybe it's better that you just go to an attorney. But for some of the more basic stuff, you guys are able to answer questions on a variety of different topics, depending on the type of law that you practice. This one comes into us today. It says, my wife had an aunt that had passed. Now, she was single. She left her house to a niece and her savings to my wife. Then they continue on to say, was it legal for them to use all the savings without my wife's permission to cover the lawyer fee and all inheritance taxes on the house?
This is a good question. Now, like some of these questions, there's not all the information out there to give the most accurate answer, but basically, to start out, all of the assets of someone's estate, you know, technically can be used to pay debts, attorney's fees, inheritance taxes, things like that. Now, if the person had a will, and there are some, this is a tricky question because you have real estate that obviously is not cash, it's just a piece of real estate, and then you have actual cash savings. If it depends on if the will specifically provides those assets to those specific people. So in a will, you have what are called specific bequests, like I give my house to my daughter, I give my bank account to my son, and then usually, well, always, if an attorney does it, there'll be a final paragraph that says the residue remainder of my estate would go maybe in equal shares to my kids, something like that. So that remainder clause or provision would entail everything else that you would own other than those specific bequests above. So typically, if there are enough assets to pay all of the debts, you would first look at those residuary assets. So in my example, you would take out the house, take out maybe that bank account, you look at all the other assets. Maybe you have to auction off their personal property, maybe they had other bank accounts not specifically listed, whatever the case may be. You look at those assets first and use those to pay any debts, maybe the attorney's fees, things like that. As far as inheritance tax goes, if there are specific bequests, that's usually that beneficiary's obligation to pay the inheritance tax. Normally, what happens with most estates is the attorney will use whatever funds are there, pay the tax off the top, and then the remainder would just be paid out to the beneficiaries to ensure that the tax is paid. But in this situation, if in fact, specifically the house was given to the one person, specifically the savings account was given to the other person, there should have been if there were other assets that were not specifically given away, they should have been used first. Now, I don't know if that's the situation here. It could have been that the savings account was part of, the residuary part of the estate that was not specifically given away. So that's kind of how you look at it. You look at those residuary assets first, then you go to specific assets if those residuary assets were not enough to pay all the debts. It can be a tricky thing when you give away specific items because you could get into a situation like this, like why was some of my assets used to pay these debts as opposed to the other? And sometimes it could get into a pro rata share, well, all we have are specific assets left, so we might have to use some of yours to pay these. But the basic thing is, if there are not enough, if you have to get into the specific bequests, those debts have to be paid some way, shape, or form. But based on this question, I would assume that savings account was not specifically given away. But I would say if they have any questions about how it was done, I mean, they can always call us or call an attorney to see, hey, was it done correctly? Because sometimes these things aren't done correctly and you might have to challenge it to see if it was done. But that's in general how it's done. I've also had where the family can come to an agreement on how certain things are paid. So
yeah, I mean,
they should consult an attorney, I would say.
It is a process. Some things have to be done before, you know, other steps.
Yeah.
And of course, everything comes with a cost.
Yes, it does.
If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
Yes. Well,
right.
we've got those details there on your screen of how you can reach out to the attorneys at Gig and Jancola. Guys, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we appreciate it.